as much as we will learn, we hope. Okay? This year's series, the Distinguished Speaker Series, during the 11th year, has as a kind of special theme the idea of spirituality. All of our presentations this year will be oriented toward that concept and the way spirituality can serve as a basis for our lives. Okay? Our first presentation this evening is from Father Patrick Collins, who will present, as you saw, a musical concert to begin the series. And to begin the entire series and begin the year and begin this concert, we'd like to begin with a short invocation offered by Professor Donald Nugent of our history department at the university. By the way, before I ask Don to come up and offer the invocation, we have the brochures for the whole series out on the benches there, just outside the door where you can get coffee during the break. This program will run a bit longer than some of our programs, and we will supply a break midway in it of about 5 to 7 minutes so that you can stretch, get a cup of coffee, do whatever you'd like to do, and then we'll have the second part of the program. It's a two-part program. The whole brochure describing the series, as I say, is available to you outside. Also, this particular presentation has a special video filming program associated with it, and there are little white slips on the tables outside. You can pick up a slip, mark your name in it, and we will make a video presentation from all of these cameras you see here available to you at cost of about $15 to $20. These videos are offered entirely at cost as a completely non-profit idea for those who would like to have this memorable event made permanent for them, a permanent record of this event that they may offer to people who have not been able to come here. Without further ado, now I'd like to introduce Professor Nugent to offer an invocation.
Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, and of all that is good and true and beautiful, we thank you and we praise you for the great gift of your good servant, our brother, Father Louis, Thomas Merton, a man of flesh and bones, but raised by you from the borders of Spain to the woods of Gethsemani, to the horizons of Asia, to be soul friend and sign of contradiction and burnt man of Christ, illuminating ancient truths that, with your incarnation, nothing human is alien, nothing divine is alien, that we are to see you and seek you not just in the sacrament of the altar or in the sophistications of philosophical theologies, but in all that is good and true and beautiful, including women and men of flesh and bones, but especially wherever life is violated. That the church is not just about security and survival, but even more, transcendence and oblation. That the prophetic life is sister of the contemplative life, and that the prophet be honored, not alienated. Grant, Lord, if we be led from old ways to still older ways, from the familiar to some far country, that we be mindful of this and know that, as the psalmist says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and that we might feel the promise as well as the pain, and be as faithful as Father Louis, and as fearless as Father Louis, and find ourselves in losing ourselves, and find you not just in mercy, but in this joyous pilgrim's words, mercy within mercy within mercy. Amen.
To introduce Father Collins tonight and to help him begin his presentation, we have the privilege of having with us Marie Petritus Murphy. Dr. Murphy is a member of the Animal Diagnostic Laboratory and is here tonight to help us participate in this program.
It is difficult to summarize in a short time the accomplishments of one who leads such a full life as Dr. Patrick Collins. He is a native of Wyoming, Illinois, and was ordained to the priesthood in 1964 in Peoria, Illinois. He holds the degrees of Master of Music Education, Master of Arts, and a PhD in Historical Theology. He has taught liturgical music and theology at 6 different universities and 3 seminaries. Within the past 3 years, he has been a visiting scholar at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California, and at the University of Notre Dame. He has created, written, and produced over 40 television programs which explore the relationship between the United States culture and the Judeo-Christian tradition. These programs were aired on NBC and the Catholic Telecommunications Network of America. He also wrote, produced, and hosted a 4-part series entitled Catholic, Roman, and American, which was filmed in the Vatican during the Extraordinary Synod of Bishops in 1985. For over 15 years, he has researched and written about the role of imagination in faith. This has led him to the belief that liturgy engages the imagination to express and experience the presence of God. As such, it is a form of art. His latest book, entitled Bodying Forth, Liturgy is an Art, is a culmination of that research. Music has always been one of his passions. He has conducted the Peoria Schola Cantorum for 6 years, been a vocal soloist for 8 years, and has given organ recitals in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, the University of Notre Dame, the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C., as well as in many other churches. Although I've met Dr. Collins for the first time today, I would guess that the philosophy he's lived by all his life has been, the one who sings prays twice. Dr. Collins.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy, and thank you, everyone, for coming to honor our friend who walked the walk and talked what he walked, Thomas Merton. A spiritual model for the end of the 20th century, because, as some people have said, in many ways, if you want to know where the 20th century was spiritually, get to know him and what he wrote. Tonight's program is a way of doing that from a slightly different perspective, from the perspective of performing Thomas Merton. Someone once said that Merton is a story told by God to shake us out of our complacency. Perhaps at the end of the 20th century, we are being shaken out of our complacency, and Merton can be our guide. Merton once said of his own writing, "It is not as an author that I would speak to you, not as a storyteller, not as a philosopher, not as a friend only. I seek to speak to you in some way as your own self. Who can tell what this may mean? I myself do not know. But if you listen, things will be said which are perhaps not written in this book at all. And this will be due not to me, but to the one who lives and speaks in us both." It's my hope and my prayer that that one who lived and spoke in and through Merton will find voice in you and me as we listen to Merton's words becoming our own words. We're not here this evening to analyze Merton's teachings, but rather to savor his words. Savor them in that same intuitive receptivity in which his writings rose to consciousness from the depths of his own soul. Merton was, I suppose, a spiritual theologian. His words about God were born of his own experience of humanity merging and meshing with divinity. May that be what happens for us tonight. That merging and meshing, that savoring of his words so that they strike a chord in the word that is our own heart. In some ways, I find it useful to grasp Merton's lasting significance by taking this man not just as an historical figure, but by taking the facts of his life and turning them into a kind of a myth, something which he hoped would never happen. I think for him to really speak on the inside of us, he needs to become a kind of a myth. When seen as a myth, Merton can embody for us meanings that are much larger than his own life, much larger than his own thought. He can reveal us to ourselves. For Merton, a myth was a combination of facts and intuitions. A combination of facts and intuitions. It's not an untrue story, and yet it's not totally factual. It has as much to do with feeling as it does with fact. And that's why tonight I am using music to help us feel our way along the journey that Merton walked. Spirituality, the subject of your series this year, is about only one thing, Merton said. It's about becoming holy. Merton knew that becoming a saint meant, first of all, simply becoming as full a human being as possible. I quote, "For me to become a saint means to be myself. Therefore, the problem of sanctity is, in fact, the problem of finding out who I am and of discovering my true self. Trees and animals have no problem with that. God makes them what they are without consulting them, and they're perfectly satisfied. But with us, it is different. God leaves us free to be whatever we like. We can be ourselves or not, as we please. We are at liberty to be real or unreal. We may be true or false. The choice is ours. We may wear now one mask, now another, and never, if we so desire, appear with our own true face. But we cannot make such choices with impunity, Merton says, for causes have effects, and if we lie to ourselves and to others about ourselves, then we cannot expect to find truth and reality whenever we happen to want them. If we have chosen the way of falsity, we must not be surprised that the truth eludes us when we finally come to need it. We are called to share with our God in creating our true identity. The first theme of tonight's presentation is the true identity, which Merton metaphored as a journey from the false self to the true self. Merton said to be holy is a question of appreciating where one is in life's journey, and then learning to foster the vital connections that are already operative. Spirituality, a journey. To help you feel Merton's metaphor, I would like to sing for you The Vagabond, music by Rafe Vaughan Williams, text by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's number 2 on your sheets.
A journey.
A journey from the false to the true self is Merton's view of spirituality, being a kind of vagabond, if you will. Merton says this journey is never a straightforward path because, first of all, our illusions about ourselves must be overcome. They must be exposed. Merton wrote, "Every one of us is shadowed by an illusory person, a false self. And one gradually comes to realize, if you're a spiritual person, that our true identity is not what appears on the surface. Who we really are is not the mask we wear, the role imposed by our upbringing, our society, our church. No, we're all much more of a mystery than that. In fact," he says, "much of what is on the surface is not truly us at all." Merton believed that the true self is simply God in us, our whole self before God. It is the self the Father created us to become. It is the self in Christ. The true self, a being simple like God, can be realized, he says, only in the mode of simple awareness. Simple awareness. And that's why, for Merton, the two elements of contemplative awareness are, first, the search for the true self, and secondly, the integrating of the false self into the true. Merton says, the secret of my identity is hidden in the love and mercy of God. Therefore, I cannot hope to find myself anywhere except in God. There is only one problem on which all my existence, my peace, my happiness depend: to discover myself in discovering God. If I find God, I will find myself. And if I find my true self, I will find God. And the only one who can teach me to find God is God alone. This difficult ascent from falsity toward truth is accomplished not through pleasant advances in wisdom and insight, according to Merton. No. The journey is much more painful. It's not knowing about our illusions, it's coming to live with and in and through and beyond our illusions. The difficult ascent from the falseness that is in all of us involves the painful unlayering of levels of falsehood, untruths deeply embedded in our consciousness. And I love this phrase of his, lies which cling more tightly than a second skin. This false, exterior, superficial, social self is made up of our prejudices, whimsy, posturing, Pharisaic self-concern, and pseudo-dedications. This false self, Merton believes, is a human construct built by selfishness and flights from reality. And because it is not the whole truth of us, it is not of God. And because it is not of God, our false self is substantially empty and incapable of experiencing the love and freedom of God. That love, that freedom, that coming to one's whole self is what our souls in stillness wait for. Would you join me in praying about that journey as you sing that song, which I believe is number 3?
Oh
The music helps us to sink into the story and make it myth. Not make it about Merton, but make it about us. What does one do about these lies that cling as tightly as the second skin? The false self, the illusions, the constructs, many of which we are not even aware of. What does one do about them? Root them out? Throw them away until we become some sort of a perfect person? And not according to Merton. Merton says, the false self is annihilated, first of all, by being acknowledged as truly a part of ourselves and accepted as part of who we are. The lies are part of us. The falseness is part of us. Its power over us is diminished as we become more aware of the illusions by which we live. They become diffused, and they become integrated into our conscious selves as part of the true self God is creating us to be. In this way, over a lifetime, Merton says, the true self gradually emerges. And we are healed of the fracture between the false self and the true self by discovering the presence of God, which is the true self, within our own consciousness. Unless we face and accept the music of our own night, according to Thomas Merton, it cannot be integrated into the fullness of the light of God's truth. This song from the Phantom of the Opera, number 5 on your sheets, may have a totally different meaning for you outside of the stage and in the context of Merton's journey from the false self to the true self.